Hey everybody, welcome back to my Hypermotard channel. Today I want to talk about a subject that I feel is pretty important, and that's whether or not you should take the MSF class, the rider safety class. I know some of you out there are beginner riders, just thinking about getting a bike, and then some of you I know are very experienced, not on street, but on dirt, and you're probably wondering if it's worthwhile to take this class. So let me give you all a scenario. Let's say you're going 35, 40 miles an hour down the street, enjoying the weather, enjoying the ride. Everything's looking good. And bam, all of a sudden, some guy turns left right in front of you, about 200 feet in front of you. What do you do in this situation? I mean, do you put the front brake on? Do you put the back brake on? Do you go into a slide? Do you not? Do you brake and then swerve, or do you swerve and then brake? Where should you be focusing your eyesight when something like this happens? What about gearing? Do you downshift while this is happening? Do you put the clutch in or just leave it out? Now, as you can see, this is just an example. Imagine this in real time. Do you really think you have any time to think about all this? And this is exactly the reason why I think this class is so important, not only for the beginner rider, but the advanced as well. So why don't you come with me? We'll take a ride through the canyons with some good friends of mine and talk about this. So first things first, you're going to see in the video that I'm going through a canyon. Now, this is just for you guys to watch while you're listening to what I'm saying. In no way am I saying that a beginner rider should attempt this kind of riding. So I have a good history of dirt bike experience as far as, I've been on a motocross track. I've been on all kinds of, you name it, anything on dirt, up and down hills, sand, anything. I consider myself a pretty good rider. But when I decided to get a street bike, that's when I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to take one of these MSF classes and see what it's all about. Well, when I went to the class, the bike that they gave us was, I believe it was an Indian 250. I can't remember. But it was a completely different bike than what I was used to. I mean, the handling, I wanted to turn this thing and it just wouldn't turn. It was so easy to just turn on a dirt bike. But on this, the handling, the gearing, just the way it just felt so awkward. The positioning of the brakes, the levers, it was just a whole new experience for me. So when I got to the class, I figured, oh, this shouldn't be too bad. With all the experience I have, I'm going to blow some of these guys away. I mean, after all, I've been doing stuff on dirt bikes that most of these guys probably have never done. In the class, there were actually people there just learning how to use the clutch that have never even sat on a motorcycle before, which to me sounds pretty scary, but I mean, if you want to ride, this is the perfect place to learn. And then there were other riders that were very experienced. In fact, I had two riders in my class that had been riding for years, but never went out and took the driver's test for the motorcycles. After a couple hours of this class, I was fumbling around with this big bike and just not having as easy time as I thought it was going to be. And that's when I just decided, you know what, I better step back, listen, and just pretend I'm a new rider here. One of the worst things I heard is that a new rider takes his class and decides he's going to get on the freeway or the highway, and then he goes down. I think the misconception is that once you take this class, all of a sudden you know how to ride. Well, I can tell you that you're only beginning to learn how to ride. There's so many more steps to this. Probably one of the most important things you could ever do is once you get out of this class, is not to attempt to go on any highway at all, period. Just go to an empty parking lot. There's plenty of drills that they showed you in class, and just do the drills over and over and over again. It can take you a couple of weeks. It could take you a couple of months. It doesn't really matter. It's your life you're talking about. You shouldn't be really in a hurry to get out there. You just want to make sure you're safe. You're going to learn so much by doing these drills. You're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn a lot about doing the drills, and you're going to, most importantly, learn the bike, because every bike is different. They all weigh different, they brake different, they accelerate different, and mostly they just all handle different and feel different. If you're a beginner rider, it's an absolute must that you actually do that and go to parking lots. And if you're an experienced rider, anything other than street riding, let me tell you something. You should also be in a parking lot practicing before you hit the streets. One of the problems with being experienced, you're probably more dangerous. And what I mean by that, it's not so much your abilities, your technique. It's more that, when you're riding in the dirt, you're so focused on what's in front of you. You're not really focused on what's behind you. Next to you, you're not worried about the street light, the stop light, the person that decided to turn left right in front of you, the little kid running across the street chasing after the ball. So what happens as an experienced rider is, you're thinking, I got this. I got the abilities. But you know what? The problem is you let your guard down. And that's probably one of the worst mistakes you can make in traffic. I mean, it only takes a split second for something to really go wrong out there. And if you're tuned out, that's when really bad things happen. So I guess one of the best pieces of advice that I can probably give you is, whether you're a beginner or advanced, Take your brand new bike, whatever bike you have, and take it into the parking lot. Start doing your drills and start getting muscle memory. The only way to build muscle memory is by consistent practice. For those of you who don't know what muscle memory is, what it is practicing something so many times that your brain just does it without having to think about what to do. A perfect example of that would be maybe walking. When you were a kid, your brain, whether you knew it or not, was going crazy trying to figure out how to maintain your muscles to keep you upright. And now it's something you don't even think about. Your brain just automatically does it. This is really important when learning how to ride a bike, or even if you're just experienced but you have a brand new bike. I mean, this isn't something you want to be practicing on the street. And I'll give you a perfect example of what happened to me. So I got this 2020 Ducati Hypermotard 950 SP. Awesome bike. But one of the things I told myself before I take this thing out on the street, even though after I did the MSF class, was to make sure I went and took it to a parking lot and learned everything I knew about the bike. Well, I can tell you, I'm real glad I did that because one of the things that happened to me within the first 10 minutes of going to a parking lot, I ended up dropping the bike. Real embarrassing. I think there was a lady in the parking lot that was looking at me going, what the hell is this guy doing? But you know what? Yeah, it sucked. It was embarrassing. It really pissed me off. But man, did I learn. And the reason why it happened is because I thought I had that mentality of, oh, I got this. I have so many years of riding experience. Well, I ended up trying to make a left turn, slow left turn, and not really understanding how the clutch worked on this bike, the weight, the brakes. Well, I ended up trying to turn left. The bike put it out and started leaning over to the left side. And the thing with this bike, it's pretty heavy. I mean, I'm used to a bike that weighs 200, maybe less, type of dirt bike. And this thing weighs 400 pounds. So when it tilted a little bit to the left and it put it out, the worst thing I could have done is hit the front brake, which you never do when you're doing slow maneuvering type drills. So the thing ended up, of course, falling to the left side and busting my mirror. Well, I can tell you that within 10 minutes, the first thing I learned is that whenever I'm trying to do a slow maneuver with this bike, I'd better be giving it gas. Now, again, this is a perfect reason to go in a parking lot. If this would have happened in the street, I would have easily been run over, and who knows, I could have been really seriously hurt. So I'm glad I did this. Within 10 minutes, I learned my first lesson. But I think I learned more in those 10 minutes than if I would have just taken off in the street riding straight, which I'm really not learning anything if you're riding in a straight line all the time. I mean, I can tell you that a motorcycle rider, I can teach anybody to get on a bike and ride in a straight line, right down the freeway, whatever. But a good rider takes the time to learn different techniques. Something that I always do and I will always do is always make it a point to go to a parking lot, whether it's 20 minutes once a week or sometimes before. Like, for example, the day that you see here riding with these friends of mine, the first thing I did is before I met them, I just went to a parking lot for about 10 minutes and do some drills. You'd be surprised in a matter of 5 minutes how well you feel on a motorcycle. Just by doing slow maneuvers, emergency braking, there's certain things that they taught you in that class. All of a sudden you feel one with the bike, you feel a lot more comfortable. And what if your brakes are a little different that day on the bike? The weather, who knows, whatever, the tires are different. So it just makes you feel a lot more comfortable on the bike. And like I said, it takes about 5 minutes. So for me personally, even with all the years of experience that I've had, I would say about 2 weeks of every day going to the park to really feel comfortable. And I did drills after drills after drills. Yeah, it's very boring, but you know what? Whether you're experienced or whatever, I was nervous. It doesn't matter how many years of experience you have. I can say you could have 20 years of dirt bike experience, but I can tell you the minute you get on the street, when you hear the sound of the cars and the sound of things going on around you, it's a different experience that you would feel in the dirt. So yeah, I was nervous, and that's me. That's me as an experienced rider. Imagine the new guy. And one of the things is when you're nervous like that, you're just not going to react the same. Your reaction times are going to be really bad. So definitely take it to a parking lot and practice. And I'll tell you another experience that I had, which was very, very interesting. I was commuting at about 5 o'clock in the morning to work, and on a normal day, just like anything else. And then all of a sudden, I'm coming up against like all these red lights. I noticed that the freeway was, I was lane splitting, but the freeway was funneling into 3 lanes. And traffic was just getting super, super congested to the point where traffic would actually stop. Now, at this point, I had an option. Either sit there and wait till all this was over or try and wing it and try it. You know what? I said, I'm going to try it. I have to get to work. I got to deal with this. So I went ahead and tried to get through traffic. So because of the way traffic was, like 90 degrees to the right, to the left, basically zigzagging through traffic. That's how tight traffic was. And I didn't know how I was going to get through this, but I managed to just squeeze myself through. And during this whole process, it's interesting. I came up along another rider who was just sitting in traffic looking at me, and he had stopped his engine. He was like, you know what? I'm not attempting this. This is crazy. And to tell you the truth, I got through this. And don't get me wrong, I had my heart in my throat the whole entire time. Yeah, I was a bit nervous, a bit scared, but I managed to get through this. It was about a quarter mile that I had to go. But man, what a feeling when I made it through. The first thing it taught me was, you know what? I'm going to do more and more and more practice. If this is what practice does, I want to do more of it. So that's exactly why I got excited about doing more and more practice, because I saw the results. I saw the payoff right away. And I still think about what that other rider must have been thinking at the time, probably thinking, man, this dude can ride. And yeah, I can ride. I'm a good rider, but you know what? I would have never, and I can honestly say I would have never been able to do that if it wasn't for all the practice that I was doing. So now you kind of get the idea of why it's so important, not only to take the MSF class, but to take the time to practice. I mean, after all, you do want to ride street bikes to have fun. You don't want to be a nervous wreck out there. And the only way to solve those nerves is to practice and feel more confident on the bike you're on. So if I were to take you through that same scenario all over again, how do you think you would react to those certain situations? I think you'd actually do quite well if you were doing all that practice. Let me tell you, when it comes to riding street bikes, anything can happen at any time without warning. So if you're a new rider or even an experienced rider, really take the time, be safe, take an MSF safety class, and then take the time to go out into a parking lot and practice. I can tell you that the practice is really never over, because you should really be taking the time to go out and make it a dedicated day to practice, or even 5-10 minutes before you meet your buddies to go practice. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this information. I hope you take it serious, because remember, it's an awesome feeling being on the bike. So with that, guys, I hope you share this information, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and I do have a lot more things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to actually break up a lot of these drills that you learn in the safety class one by one and kind of go through them in the parking lot. So till then, thanks for tuning in.